I'm Alexandra Kreis, and you're listening to Outer Travel Inner Journey. In my own search for self-understanding, I have met people from all walks of life. I bring to you a taste of these encounters. Hello and welcome back to Outer Travel Inner Journey. On today's show, I'm sitting down with Ivory Van Veen. She is currently in Canada. Hello, Ivory.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Alexandra?
Oh, I'm doing quite well, thank you. I enjoy spring. Spring is always beautiful to me. So I thought I'd come together with Ivory and introduce you to you, dear listener, because Ivory just revealed to me that she has spent some time in an ashram, and I thought that might be an interesting aspect to people who would love to do that and maybe see the impact of that. So Ivory had started, as far as I understand, she started yoga teaching career. You did your education as a yoga teacher. Is that how it started, Ivory?
Yeah, so I have my original background is in like health and fitness, but so it's personal training before then, but yeah, so I did a 200-hour yoga teacher training and then was inspired to go to the ashram and deepen my practice.
So that teacher training is a Shivananda teacher training.
Yes, yeah? I have a Shivananda training and just like a 200 general hatha teacher training.
Oh, I see. So what was your desire behind, why did you decide to go into an ashram? Why were you driven to do that?
I think I was just looking for something. Well, I guess like I don't know, like once you start to taste like the stillness of yoga, and like I was just having all these like aha moments, and like I was just like awakening to like my spirituality and being like how is this happening, or this like, but everything was like making sense, but it was just like so mind-blowing because it was a veil had been lifted. It was like, oh, like, whoa, this is like a whole other world to explore. And I was just really, really loving that process and yoga. And I just had this desire to really deepen my practice and really go into it, versus the like go to class 2 or 3 times a week. And not that you can gain so much from that as well, but it's totally different when a deep practice. So that was where that came from. And I also wanted to travel. I was like, I want to travel, I want to deepen my practice. And the Shivananda Bahamas ashram came up in my Google search, and also was recommended to me from a few like friends in the community who had like just gone for a week to discover, and like recommended it to me. So yeah, I was just like, okay, let's do it. Like it just it felt aligned at the time, and yeah, there it was.
Yeah, and so what was the hardest part for you to give up, to carve out the courage to go there, or to carve out the time? I mean, if you think about somebody I think about how I touched yoga, and I got totally inspired, but I decided, okay, I can only book a holiday, and then I ended up accidentally in an ashram while I visited my yoga teacher, because I couldn't find any other accommodation. So what was it for you? What kind of triggered what?
I think like I just knew I needed to change, and I knew yoga was the path for me. I went when I was pretty young. Like I want to, not like that long ago, but I must have been like, I'm 27 now. I must have been like 24. Like I don't at that age, even now, like I don't have a lot of obligations. I don't have kids, family, mortgage. Like there's nothing really holding me back. I can understand if you're in a different situation, but it was I was ready and prepared for it, like,
Okay.
and I wasn't really nervous, to be honest. I was just open to the experience.
It was your
Yeah.
next adventure, so to speak.
What's my next adventure?
No, it was your next adventure, so to speak, at that age.
Yeah, it was my next adventure. Yeah. Yeah. It was just aligned and I was ready. I didn't really know exactly what I was getting into, so I wasn't really nervous because I didn't really know what to expect.
Yeah. And what happened then when you arrived? What was the, what we've heard about so many people, famous people. I'm just thinking Elizabeth Gilbert, she describes in Eat, Pray, Love, how she kind of arrived at the ashram and how she struggled with the day-to-day. Oh, I have to get up and be at that,
Right.
So what was it for you that triggered you or not triggered you in the ashram? What did you like? What did you find
It
difficult?
seems so long ago. I'm trying to think. Like, I would say it's a big shock in the beginning because it's just a different conscious step of, like, a different consciousness you're stepping into in some way. Like, we all have collective consciousness, and we all have collective consciousnesses, that's not really a word, but like based on where we're living too, right? Like, there's a collective conscious in Germany, there's a collective conscious in Ottawa. Like, there's these little holes and gaps that we step into. So stepping into a collective consciousness that is vibrating, like, here, when you're maybe vibrating here, I think that more was a big step in, like, just that kind of shock of, where am I, in some way. I would also say that
how did you figure that out? I mean, that is, to me, you're talking about Akashic Records, in the sense of that whatever we do is kind of stored in the environment. So if there are certain practices in cultural practices, they're going to be stored and they are in around us. So when we kind of fine tune ourselves, we're subconsciously being driven to that. So how did that kind of
well, I don't know. It's just something I knew or felt or understood subconsciously, I guess. I mean, it was a very magical place for me. Like, the plants like fucking dance, like, they're alive, these plants. Like, when you walk into the ashram, like, they're like moving, and like, like, I'm not talking about like wind moving, like, they are very alive. It's like,
yes.
Yeah, and there was also just like a certain it was just like stepping into paradise for me. It was so beautiful. It just felt like unreal. Like, how is this happening? How are all these people living together and just in harmony and in peace? And there's just like this beautiful smells and sounds and just love and people taking care of each other. And that was pretty cool for me. Also, like, as I guess as well, like, for me, we haven't talked about this part yet, but there was definitely like recognizable faces for me right off the bat, like people I've met before, if you believe in past lives, like definitely people I definitely have had a past life in that community before, so it was quite intense. But yeah, just knowing that there was like definitely a shift in consciousness. So it was just like a deep knowing. Yeah.
Wow.
Deep knowing. Even some of the people like were familiar, like reminded me of family or friends, like just their aura, their way about them. They're like, they didn't have to look exactly like a family member, but like there was something very deep, like heart deep almost.
What did it help you with? I mean, if we want to go there or not, it doesn't matter, like whether people believe in past lives or not. I think that's not the point. I think the more interesting point would be like, what is it enabling you to when you land in this familiarity and in this kind of feeling maybe that there is something that you need to do right here, or kind of experience right
Right.
here. Well, what was it for you? What came up, if it's not too private?
Yeah, I didn't know what I needed to do there. There was nothing. No, I don't think there was anything that came up, but like I could just feel like this. Yeah, it was just an intense feeling, or knowing that I am meant to be here, or I've been here before, or there's something for me here. Just definitely a deep knowing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the thing about the deep knowing, what is it, like the essence of it? What do we get out of when we know something so intently and so intensely? What is happening? I mean, what happens? You know, if we make this a conversation rather than a tale of I feel that
my adventure.
I think that we're living in cycles. You know, what comes up in me when I hear you saying that, if we land in something where we feel that we can trust the environment, you know, because ashram is so not modern, you know, it's not something we spend a lot of time in, and in the Western culture we would think of like monasteries or anything, you know, in comparison.
Right.
So it's not anything somebody would likely do, but more and more people are getting intrigued in going to ashrams, or when they want to deep, as like you, experience their yoga practice a bit deeper, with thinking about these places, and suddenly you end somewhere where you're meant to be, as you called it. So did you feel you wouldn't have traveled so deeply into the yoga practice, or didn't make the friends, or was there an elevation of time or a speeding up in understanding what comes along with a lineage like Shivananda, or what comes along with what we call the spiritual path?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what you're asking.
Okay, I sound so mysterious when I concoct my question. I think sometimes, like, okay, I used to travel to Ireland when I was in my teenage years. You know, I used to go to Ireland quite often with good friends of mine, and somehow that place had become the source of being somebody different, you know, like, because nobody from school did that. I did that with different friends in a different matter. And the next time when Ireland came up on my radar was when a friend of mine, like, now I was in my 30s, a friend of mine kind of went for a holiday, for a vacation, and she came back and said, I'm moving there. And something really cut right through, and told me I need to go there too. And I spent years and years and summers in Ireland before. And then somebody comes, and I thought, I've done that and check that. And then the next thing that happened to me was, like, I'm back in Ireland because I felt called into that place. And once I landed in Ireland, that was quite familiar to me, and yet not familiar, you know, like you landing in a monastery or in an ashram, where you're aware that there is yoga, and suddenly you're surrounded by people that can hold you, or, you know, that can hold your spirit. For me, it was like it triggered everything that needed to be triggered that is blind to me. That's how I came out of that experience in Ireland initially, you know, until I kind of found what I call in my work the Dharma. You know, what am I made? Why am I here? What is my task? I wouldn't have developed that if I stayed in my home country. So my question to you is exactly that, you know, did you feel you wouldn't have dared to do things or open up to things, or maybe not, you know, that's not a yes or no question. It's just like,
Yeah, I definitely think there's a different container there for sure, that like you know, like that allowed me to heal. Not necessarily that there was any deep wound that needed healing, but we all carry shit and baggage, and having like, can you imagine just being surrounded by like 50 other yogis who just like can totally hold you and hold space for you? And, you know, if that yogi isn't available, there's another person that's available to like watch you cry and watch you grow and like just be there for you as you move through the practice, and watch yourself being unpeeled like the onion. It's pretty amazing to have a container like that.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think I would have accelerated or done what I needed to do at home. It wouldn't have happened, because I don't think like I had that safe container of people around me to hold me. But I also learned through that process, and I would actually say the hardest part of ashram life is reintegration back into societal life. But through that process, I would say like I learned to hold space for myself as well.
Yeah.
You know, like be able to go home, and even though, you know, I didn't have the support anymore, I didn't have those friends, those people to hold me and hold the space for me anymore. It was like relearning to hold that space on my own, and taking what I learned and being open to sharing myself vulnerably to even my family or friends or people I would consider like won't get it, won't understand, it's okay if they don't understand. I just need to express myself in this moment, or I just need to, you know, be in this moment. And it's okay if the other person, you know, isn't like necessarily receptive. They're still a human with a heart. And you know, it's more about holding my own space and my own practice. But I don't know if that answers your question.
Absolutely. It reminds me, thank you for reminding me, you know, it reminds me of that in order for change, we need to build safe containers, you know, and like an ashram can be such a container. And I mean, moving to another country was for me a safe container. I was going away from like the container where people defined me in a certain way, which I don't want to be defined as any longer. And so I created my own container, and I still create container for people outside the ashrams through group work to do that, to feel safe in that spot, you know, and then kind of go through the process in a way that you can learn and open up until you opened up enough or learned enough to go out and practice that without the container in like a regular environment, if you want to call it that. Yeah, that's what you remind me of when you speak like that. Yeah.
And I think that's also just like the power of travel, right? Like to be able to just go to a different country where nobody knows you. And I'm not saying like, you know, to let go of yourself, or like to not let go of yourself, but run away from yourself. That's a different thing. Yeah. But sometimes we do need to go and reinvent ourselves and re-experience ourselves, or experience ourselves in a new perspective, in a new way, and build that safe space for ourselves to explore a different dynamic of ourselves, and then come back and integrate what we've learned, you know? Yeah. So I think that's super powerful what you're saying, for sure.
Yeah, and what you're saying, because you also mentioned that, not here, but before, that, you know, when you go into an ashram, it's quite a bubble. I mean, it's like you know where you can release. You have these practices apparently in place where you have a concentrated day. Is that like that? Like you live on a schedule, right? Yeah. Yeah. So that's what makes it kind of a bubble, because you're not going to be in a strict container like that if you kind of come into your regular working life or anything. So
for sure not.
No, for sure not. So what was your intake on that, you know, strictness, or on that routine that's coming with an ashram life?
Yeah, it's very hard. Definitely, like, I think the biggest thing in the beginning was like an issue to like authority figure, like, and I know I still have issues with like authority and police and government and all this stuff, but like it just felt like, who are you to tell me what I can and can't do, and you're gonna kick me out if I don't do it? Like, this anger, there's a lot of anger in me in the beginning, towards like, the system.
Yes.
Um,
And how was that for you? I mean, did it had any repercussions for you to be in that space of where you were resisting, obviously, and maybe a little bit rebellious?
were there what would be, can you give me an example?
Yeah, did you kind of end up being so rebellious that you wouldn't show up for practices, and then you were told, if you don't show up? I mean, I don't know, I'm making this up.
In the beginning, no, because I really thought like I wasn't allowed, and like I'm someone who follows the rules pretty well. So in the beginning, I was just very like internally upset. At near the like middle or end, or I don't know, somewhere along the way, like I definitely did allow myself to not show up, you know. Yeah, and that was totally okay. And I think that was part of the practice of allowing myself to be okay with not showing up. Like it's, you know, and because I can be a bit of a perfectionist and a bit of like, you know, driven A-type sometimes. So yeah, that was part of the practice. And, you know, they don't kick you out if you miss a satsang or a practice or whatever. I mean, if it becomes a regular thing and you're not really there to take in the experience, yes, you're asked to leave, because you're not, what's the point of you being there if you're not actually being a part of the experience? So yeah, I kind of learned how to bend the rules a little bit over time, you know, like just kind of talking to other people and seeing how they were practicing, and just and just being like responsible to myself first before somebody else. So okay, of course you can tell me what to do, but if it doesn't feel right for me, I'm not going to do it. And I think that was a huge learning curve for me too, because I mean, we're so programmed, right? Like we do what we're told, and to actually be able to like listen to that inner authority that's saying, you know, like, no, like my body needs sleep or, you know, like just one day of sleep, or you know, I need to be by the ocean right now, you know, or I'd rather be meditating here. You know, and that's totally okay. And it's that feminine balance practice. I would say ashram life is very masculine, and, you know, there is some issues I do have with it, but there is also like a beauty in that too, because you learn discipline, you learn to power through resistance. You find your own way to move through resistance. So I definitely think, like, you know, there is a beauty to it, but yeah, like long term, it definitely, I couldn't do it long term. Actually, you know, I think I could, but I would need to know that I would be supported in more balanced practice, you know. Like if I shunned or condemned from the group, like it would just be too much for me to be like, okay, like if I'm going to be shunned for, you know, going to the beach right now, like it's not happening, or whatever, going to get a coffee, or like in the higher monk levels, you can see that there is like that strictness and that requirement. So I don't know.
And you never got called, you never felt called into that, becoming like a monk or a nun in your case, obviously.
Sorry, just phone call came through. Oops, I didn't know I had that on. I apologize. That's a hard question because I think yes and no. I would say no more so. Like there's a part of me that's was like, yes, I could do this, and like I really enjoy the environment and the people, and I feel so good here and it feels like home here for me. I mean, I definitely know I've had past lives as a monk, but so I think there was that part of me being like, okay, like this, this feels familiar, but I think there's something like deep inside me that knew or knows that like I have a different path to
Mm-hmm.
lead in this life. And
Mm-hmm.
I do think like I want, children and a family, and um yeah, I don't think
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think everyone who goes to the ashram considers it. If you stay for more than 3 months, I think everyone thinks about it,
Yeah.
like, oh, like this seems so beautiful,
Yeah.
this life.
And not everybody who goes to church needs to become a pastor, you're right. It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. And I do feel there is a little bit of ashram shopping going on. I don't know whether you perceive that as well, as you're kind of stepping into the yoga world as a teacher, and a lot of people, they want to do that bit of shopping. But I understand you took some time out, that's like 6-7 months, to really get into the experience and really get through these, as you say, resistances, and discover what you need to discover for yourself. So would you recommend to go for a short time? Is that purposeful, or what is your own take after your own experience, of course?
I think you can always receive something from going, even if it's for short. Personally, I think it takes a lot more time to integrate into that kind of environment. Like they do host, people for a week or weekend, or they have like little programs, like detox programs or whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
really, like meditation programs or whatever. But yeah, I think you need at least a week, 10 days to integrate into the space before you can actually like start to really receive the
Yeah.
practices. And I would recommend someone stay for a month to 3 months if they were to go. I would highly recommend it. If it's something that
Mm.
is deep on your heart and is a desire of yours, like I would definitely 100% recommend it. It will change your life. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think so. I mean, what I heard you saying is obviously a conundrum that I feel myself faced with a lot lately. The instigation of discipline doesn't come easily, and to some it comes easily, and then there is the boundaries of like, how far are you taking discipline until you're free? I mean, discipline can bring us so much. The discipline of brushing our teeth can mean that we have healthy teeth, and in the end, if there's no further complications, so discipline has its value. But as you're saying, if it's kind of losing its power because the discipline is so enforced that you are not free to find your own life expression and life force, then it becomes detrimental, as like almost cult worthy, I think. So
Yeah. Oh, for
yeah.
sure. Oh, it is
Yeah.
like cult in some ways. Like I won't deny that. Like it is
Mm.
very cult like, and I think there is a lot of that worldwide. Like it's interesting, and especially with like these like lineages, these gurus, like we're seeing so many, even like Bikram, there was a Bikram documentary, there was some other documentary come out, but I guess the Kundalini, what's the Kundalini guy's name?
Oh, I don't know. No.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
anyways, a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
of the
Yeah. But
high
yeah.
gurus fell in the last year.
Yes.
Um, or like things have come out about them mistreating women and blah blah blah. And
Mm.
like I do think there is some issues with community living and this cult culture, um because there's both, there's the light and the dark, because there are benefits. But yeah, it's an intense, it can be an intense experience for some people in that way.
Mm.
I didn't find that, like, I didn't feel like, oh, like this is a cult, but like a lot of people in the ashram were like, oh, it's so culty here. I'm like, well, yeah, it kind of is, but you signed up for it, you know?
Yeah, I think the borderline to, you know, cults is, or where we're not sure whether we can call something a cult or not, is in the very own responsibility of how far you allow yourself to be led, you know, or
Right,
attach yourself.
exactly.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what I
that's
think
the
too.
problem too,
Mm-hmm.
is like all these people are coming because, well, not everyone, but a lot of people come with like heavy trauma and baggage and stuff that they haven't
Mm,
healed. And someone comes along and says, hey, like, I can help you, you know, but
yeah,
like,
yeah.
where are their true intentions? What it like, yeah, I saw like a few people where like I could tell, like, you know, they've had some very deep like trauma, and this was a safe place for them, and that's
Mm,
great. But
mm.
because they crave that safety so deeply, like it just took them, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I totally hear you. And it's definitely not easy. How do you create groups? As you say, you know, there is an issue with, you know, I mean, group dynamics are important for our growth, because they can elevate growth and they can further growth, and then they can become exactly the opposite, you know, like in this pandemic, where if you say, if we are still in COVID-19 here, and if you say something about numbers that are right and wrong, and if you say something about how to protect people or not to protect people, or what's more important, it becomes so, you know, group enforced. No, why are you not wearing that mask? Are you not caring about the person in front of you? That's group enforcement to me, instead of allowing people in their own expression, you know, and to see what's going on around them, and knowing their own good health for first thing, you know, just to take this
Right.
into what's happening, not only within, it's just a reflection, because we're looking at, to me, we're looking at micro bio, how do you say that, microbiome graphics, you know, compared to macrobiographics. You know, if you look at an ashram, or if you look at a yoga scene, or if you look at something that is kind of following a lineage, if we want to use
Mm-hmm.
that word, and it becomes something where the people that are involved in enforcing rules, they understand through the lineage, you know, and they enforce it in the way they want it. And then it's just a reflection of what's really going on a bigger level, I think, you know, like
Right.
politically or so on.
Totally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They just
Yeah.
microbiome.
Yeah. Microcosm, macrocosm, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking also, I think of two words at this point, but yeah, macrocosm, microcosm, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that. Yeah, that's what I find. So, but you came out, just to finish this conversation with
Yeah.
you, and you came out with a lot of results. And what would you say was your biggest takeaway from your life in an ashram?
Mm. That's hard. I don't know. I would maybe two things. The importance of community, and like, yeah, the importance of community and friendship, as well as maybe, I think one of the biggest things for me is like allowing myself to feel and express my emotions. You
Mm,
know,
mm,
I was always a very sensitive child. Like, you could ask my parents, they'd still say I'm sensitive, but very sensitive child. And like at an early age, I really learned to shut off the emotion. You know, I would still feel it, but I would never, it would just go in deep inside me, and I would never express it. And I think, yeah, I learned that it's safe and okay to express my emotions. So I'd say that
mm.
would be like one of my biggest takeaways.
That's beautiful. I think that's beautiful. We don't need to express our emotions in a way that other people think. Like don't need to yell or scream or cry all the time. But what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say, it's like a way of finding words around your emotions, or finding how you can liberate your emotions and let them pass through you in a way that you acknowledge them. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Beautiful. So just for the listener who is interested to be in touch with you and maybe get a little bit more of your wisdom and your offerings, where can we find you, Ivory?
Yeah, you can probably email would be the best, I think, or Facebook. And it's just Ivory Van Veen 1993 at gmail.com. Or you can find me on Facebook.
Yeah. But you teach yoga. Do you have a page that people can contact?
I do. Oh, yes, I do have a website. It's just my name, ivoryvanveen.com. I actually don't use it that much, but you could definitely check out my website.
Yeah, brilliant. I think we leave it at that. I put your website in the description of the show.
Awesome.
So if you are in Quebec, Canada. Yeah, Quebec, right. Quebec, Canada, and you'd like to get in touch with Ivory and kind of take up some work with her, that's where you find her. Thank you for taking time to show up here and have this conversation, Ivory.
Yeah, you're so welcome. It was so fun.
And thanks to everybody who listened in again today. I hope to see you soon again. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoy listening to my podcast, consider to become a patron at patreon.com/Alexandra Kreis and pledge your donation.